So.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the City of Lake Forest Park City Council work session. I'll be chairing the meeting today because both the mayor and the deputy mayor are off. I guess the first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Somebody want to move that?
So moved. Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. The discussion. Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed or abstain. Thank you. Okay, so we have two council discussion topics. First, I believe Director Hoffman is going to tell us about Resolution 25/2010.
Try and keep on camera a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
Good evening, Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director. This proposed resolution continues services for building plan reviews, inspections, interpretations, and so forth. Calvin retired October 1st after 20 years here, 40 years in the business. We had an existing contract with EHC in place since, I believe, 1998. They were one of their customers. And they tried to retain us, so we honored that out of respect. And they didn't have the bandwidth. We gave them a period of time to recruit so that they could have a local inspector and deal with all the work that they had already in place. They gave us a 30-day letter to end the contract because they didn't have the bandwidth. So during that time period, we asked around, checked into the industry, looked at options, and selected SAFEbuilt, put them in place with a contract not to exceed $30,000, and that in December 1st of 2025, and began a recruitment immediately. We've had several qualified candidates, but we have not filled the position. So here we sit in April, still have the daily need for plan reviews, inspections, code interpretations. We're asking to amend the existing contract under the current rates, but to end it essentially March 31st, 2026, and raise the not to exceed to 120,000 total. This is the first touch or introduction here at the workshop. The attachments are to the agenda bill and answer any questions.
Question. So the first, so when was it initiated? The same.
November 1st, I believe it was signed second week, put in place. They've been doing those services since November.
So
2024. Yeah.
And so you're saying that you want to make it go until
Next March.
March 2026, but it's going to be increased to 120,000.
Essentially, we're adding 90,000. We're still recruiting. Our hope is that we get a top-notch local character, very friendly, very informed person to fill the job in-house. So that's why they're not to exceed. We don't intend to spend that much. It's offset by permanent revenue, but if need be, if we don't fill the position, they can perform those duties.
But they've been performing the duties up until now for the 30,000.
Correct. And they've been invoicing. We're approaching, I believe, in the next invoice, the 30,000 maximum. So that's the urgency.
That's what we're looking.
Thank you. So that 30,000 then has lasted us 6-ish months.
No, three plus almost 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it varies throughout the year. Summer is much busier.
Gonna pick up. Yeah.
So, we made a judgment call as to what we think we would need to get through that period, but we still have to recruit and not need it.
And so essentially the unused payroll kind of for this is sort of offsetting these costs.
I think
Or
the
is it
majority
lower?
is the permit fees.
Okay, it's coming from.
Exactly. And the rates are the same. Even though we're asking to raise the not to exceed number, the rates stay the same. I think it's 37%. Some cities are 50% of the plan review fees. SAFEbuilt negotiated 37, so it's very favorable.
Thank you.
Oh, right, that's why we're going.
Yes, thanks. So based on the numbers you said, we'd be spending roughly $10,000 per month on this contractor, assuming they go for the full length. How would that compare to the salary, benefits, et cetera, for a permanent hire?
In-house building official, I assume, will definitely make 6 figures, so 150 plus benefits. 40, 150, 160, I'm not sure.
We calculate benefits around 40%.
Significant savings
For using the professional services.
for the time being.
That's
Remind me about the selection process. Was it advertised or was it just you selected somebody based upon recommendation? So where I'm going with this is that typically small contracts within the authority, you just pick somebody. But at this value, it would be a selection process. So it's essentially converted into a sole source.
Yeah, when BHA gave us the 30-day notice, there's a little bit of panic.
Yeah.
We go hour to hour, you know. So in that context, we didn't have time to RFQ or go broadly, but we wanted to compare, see what was available. So I would call it a in touch, highly intuitive search process through known names and what range you have, are you available, and is this a situation that you could easily adapt to? We were very comfortable at the initial 30,000. We needed an emergency service. Given that, what I recommend is to extend it. SAFEbuilt's very good. They have the more staff than I've experienced with everyone I know, the contacts I've checked, and the businesses that do this, especially. So in that sense, for this time period, and I didn't name them in the materials, a lot of it is word of mouth. They would not like to appear in our report, but ask those questions professionally, receive responses, select and SAFEbuilt. If we continue, we don't fill the vacancy, we would categorize building services in the overall RFQ that is anticipated later this year for a variety of engineering, planning, building, and update all the contracts.
Well, just that at this dollar amount, we didn't go through a selection process, so it's really a sole source at this point.
It was competitive in the sense that we checked around, and there are very few firms that do this. We did not RFQ.
I have a question, which is kind of related to what Councilmember Legal was talking about. So how is our search process going for the building official? Is there a timeline?
Immediately.
Okay, fair enough.
Shannon got through 2 recruitments and we made 2 offers that weren't accepted. Highly qualified. It's very competitive for a small jurisdiction, and stay away from the names and so forth. I think we got close twice. I think we're in a position where, with all the other recruitment she has in hand, we need to do another one, a more well-rounded. This would give us more time. But our intent is to have that certified building official that does those range of duties, has the expertise, but has the local magic. You can go out to the field and not make people angry. You can implement it in a human way. That's a very hard person to find. And so I feel lucky that we have SAFEbuilt. They can fulfill that because they have a larger staff than you value. And a building official that I used to work with does consulting, hires them. So as I checked through my connections, that was the recommendation that kept coming up, other than BAC, but we already knew their circumstances. And I noticed reported that we checked with SCJ, a couple of other small permitting houses that are sole proprietors. They just don't have the range. They can't do inspections 4 or 5 days a week. We don't have a large number of permits, but what we do get, we need immediately. Right.
And we don't want to end up being like Seattle where you can take 9 months to get a permit or something like that. So I completely support your strategy. I just was wondering, do we have to re-advertise the whole thing then? Because we couldn't get these, oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, so yeah, do we have to go through the whole process of re-advertising the position then because our candidates didn't come through?
Well, it's been constant and there've been 2 large pushes, which are costly and so they have end dates and, first review. And at this point, the last candidate that we reviewed is starting to get very quiet. So in that sense, I think Shannon has to then take the new effort with a new reply by date. Another first review and give her time. And the alternatives listed in the agenda bill. If we get this invoice and it's at $30,000, you're looking at existing staff doing these services. Well, we don't have expertise. Not going to do inspections for foundations, things that fall and kill people. So that's the urgency in this second round. SAFEbuilt's been performing at a very high level. They've had 2 complaints about attitude of an inspector and they fixed it immediately. So they're very much in tune with the owners being on site for inspection, may not have all the paperwork, may not even want to be there for 4 or 6 hours, but they need to accommodate that. Yeah, so far they're doing quite well. Great.
And Mark's point, so the position's open until filled, then we will list the first review days, go through that process. Right to the well, but we also don't keep everything up on all the websites that you have to pay for those advertisements. So they only run for so long, then you can circle back and it's several $100s every time you do that. So and then just quickly, not that this is best practice, but there is no state law requiring an RFQ process for personal services that aren't architectural, land surveying, or engineering services, so inspection services. Mark did reach out to several firms by phone and email to find qualified, get a good price, but there is no state law that requires RFQ. I had to look that up.
Yeah, so I kind of want to follow up on my previous question. So it sounds like that SAFEbuilt is highly regarded. So in terms of the contract, I'm generally okay with that. But I guess my question is, if SAFEbuilt is highly regarded and cheaper than hiring a permanent employee, can you kind of explain what's the justification, like what's the big advantage of hiring someone permanently rather than making this a more permanent arrangement?
It's my impression in the year that I've been there that the character of the city and the hands-on and what Calvin brought to the position is that's the mix that is wanted. We have not analyzed a cost benefit to going full consultant based on the number of applications we have. If we went RFQ, we could certainly do that. There's been no indication that this situation would be best served in this small community by outside consultants.
Do we typically have the same inspector servicing us through SAFEbuilt so far, or does it cycle right now?
It cycles. I think on any given day, that inspector is in 5 to 7 cities, generally in the same area. And I've personally talked with 3. When the 2 primaries are not available, Bobby, the supervisor, he gets in his car and covers. So while we were experiencing Calvin retiring and going with BAC, we went down to inspections 2 days a week and struggled to meet that. And there were some inspections we didn't have the expertise. BAC was trying to hire that expertise. It just wasn't working. SAFEbuilt brings all the expertise as needed, and we've now gone to 4 days a week. One of the advantages of the in-house would be 5 days a week, as needed, to your door and customized. One of the issues we're dealing with now is similar to when you get cable service. They give you a window. You have to be there. SAFEbuilt has a wide area, and part of the rate and the scope is based on that they can cover a wide area, even on days where we have 1 or 2 inspections. They can do that. at a very low rate. But what the sacrifice is, they cannot specify morning and afternoon, 11 to noon, please be there. And so some of the feedback we're getting is, I don't want to sit here all day. We're starting to be able, with our new permit coordinator, permit tech, get to where we have an expectation the evening before, is it early or late? So we're starting towards that, but with an in-house official, there's no way to tailor it to specific time.
If you did work with them to be more of a permanent or full-time consultant, would they assign one or two people to our city? For
Not-
these services?
Not individually, because I don't think the workload is there. I think when we had our initial discussions, the proximity was the key. They're based out of Bellevue. They did Newcastle. They have large numbers. They can swing by Lake Forest Park rather convenient. Go to the northern cities. So the rate reflects that. If we went to more full-time, I doubt the rate and this specific assignment would stay the same. They're a large company, this quantity of plan review inspections does not support that in their view.
So we don't need them 5 days a week. We don't need them 8 hours a day, but we do need them 5 days.
A plan review, we ship as needed. We don't have a plan review. We don't use that category. Inspections are called in 3:30, 4 o'clock for the next day. Put them on a list. They've been able to accommodate down to 1. It's not likely anyone else could come up with 1 inspection at any rate. And so they've been doing that. It's hard to characterize. I guess the word is as side assignment that fulfills our needs 4 days a week. I would like to go 40 hours, 5 days a week and tailor it to. We do this for a living. A lot of our permits are very small, mechanical, plumbing, window, small addition. They don't necessarily have the funds to hire a contractor or consultant to sit there for 4 or 6 or 8 hours and take care of all that stuff. A lot of the steps for a permit, they like to do themselves. And so that interface with the property owner would be an advantage of having an in-house building official. Answering the questions, there's a lot of site-specific questions we cannot get to because we do not cover the cost. Building code interpretations are covered by this, but they have to be official. So if you're a contractor and you build homes, you know what to ask, you know what code, you know the energy code is very specific. If you're a homeowner, you don't know any of that. You're fishing. And then you call City Hall and you say something like, what do I need? And we try and help as best we can. But until it rises to a threshold of this contract, there's nobody.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, so I guess we'll see you next hour.
Now, the one good note is our permit tech has been here. This is the second week and he's done really well.
Great. Wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item, it's the Public Works Fleet Report, Administrator Hill.
Thanks. I'm through my presentation that you have a printed copy that was online. And this is follow-up. From the discussion you had on the police fleet, asked for similar information on public works fleet, so just go ahead and get started. And that is one of our next trucks. There we go. All right, so current fleet situation, we have 10 vehicles out at Public Works for those of our heavy duty trucks. So your 550s and your dump trucks, 2 medium duty trucks, so 3/4 ton pickup truck. 3 administrative vehicles, smaller trucks, Colorados, so you've seen the list, and then the street sweeper. Also under this fleet are 2 community development vehicles, one for the building official and one for the planning staff. Up until you recently did surplusing of vehicles, we had 3 vehicles in the department. We're not proposing, after talking to Director Hoffman, to replace the 1960 Cherokee. Disposing the 2 vehicles seem to work just fine for them, as long as we have one for the building official. Once that position's filled, the one planning staff vehicle is sufficient for that. Next slide. So here's a list of the vehicles within the fleet under Public Works, including those 2 vehicles for community development. The top 3 are the 3 that we're recommending be replaced. They are at their replacement life. And the replacement values you see in the notes are what we put together last year when we're talking about this. They include inflation, they include tax. Everything's built into those. So those are what we anticipate being the true costs. And in looking at the F-550 that we just bought with the dump on it, it was very close to that 154, 555. So it's a little inflation, but should be right on target. The replacement for the Chevy Colorado, this is a little different. So you'll see down below, there's a Chevy Colorado the superintendent drives. That would be given to the on-call position. Vehicle that's almost 153,000 miles on it. And then replacing that with a hybrid vehicle, looking at like the Ford F-150 EcoBoost, which is a true hybrid vehicle. That price of 66,900 is the reason the asterisk is there is that's currently not available through state contract. So building it online and making a best guess, so that was the closest that I could get at this point. We're gonna have to explore, but Clary Ford has the state contract if we could be able to get that vehicle through there. So the other 2 vehicles on this list that say should be replaced are the Jeep Cherokee, which is the building. No, that's building. That's actually the planning vehicle. And the Explorer is the one that the building official drives. They should be replaced. They're beginning to rust out. They're worn. They're old police vehicles that were hand-me-downs. As I looked into this, originally the idea was that the Colorado 2006 Colorado would go to the community development department, but we're at 153,000 miles. We're just gonna go ahead and surplus that. Talked to the chief today. His vehicles are not something he would recommend being hand-me-downs. So we're gonna stick with those 2 vehicles for right now because they are fully general fund vehicles and I haven't had time to figure out how we can replace those. They will hold on for several years. They don't get a lot of mileage, so they can be used for a while longer.
A silly question. On the previous slide, you said there were 10 public works and 2 community development vehicles. So that's 12, but how come there's 15 rows on this table?
That's the question. I thought of it too.
Right, that's a good question. Let's see. Well, one of them is going away, the
Right.
2006 Colorado. Let's see, I don't. Sweepers on here. I will have to get back to you as to why there are more. That's why you're not asked to take action tonight. It's just an introduction. I went through this. We have so many lists that we finally just had to have somebody Public Works go through and say, this is what we have. I've obviously counted something somewhere there. So let me figure that out. I will bring that back to you. The idea is this is first touch, talking budget and finance on the 17th. Bring it back to you on the 24th. So let me figure out where my counting error is. Get back to you. Then we hop into the equipment. This is where, as you saw in the report, the New Holland tractor slope mower needs to be replaced in 2026, as well as our riding lawnmower. If you know where the slope mower is, as a tractor, an articulating arm, big mower on the end. That's how we trim slopes all the way down all of our slope roads, and the riding mower is just one of those that we use in parks. Those, as Rebecca has reviewed, those are well beyond their life, and they've done an evaluation, feel they can hold on through this year, but that they should be replaced next year. So the swing that you see, we'll get to that later. I just included the fuel cost for you, as I stated in the report, and this was confusing for a couple of people. The value of the price per gallon that I put in there is the first quarter of 2020, first quarter of 2021, because there was a whole range throughout the year. Questions?
Can we go back a moment to the slide? So, quick math of the three vehicles based upon the previous slide was about 290. In the budget presentation, it was suggested purchase of public work vehicles of those three vehicles at about 290. But that's for the 25-26 biennium. So if you, for example, the mowers and stuff, if you wanted to purchase them in 2026, where would that run?
So they should be. Sorry, let me hop forward to that slide. Down there, and so there should be a public works purchase here, this 510-338.
That's the other part too. But why wait if you need them now? Why wait till next year to purchase them if it's something like?
Why our public works director is here.
I guess it was just referral and split because we felt like we could get those to last until 26 and then purchase maybe in 26 and you push it forward a little bit more. But that's not really matter.
They could be purchased now too.
Well, I mean, we should use our assets to for the value that they represent. We should purchase them one year or the other if that doesn't represent value. Meaning, if I get another year out of them, then I get another year out of it. So if I buy a mower next year, then I got essentially one more year.
That was the assumption, is that we would get this next year out of them.
Okay.
That's why they're here.
But that's why I also go back to, are we deferring, or in fact, that is the plan.
That is the plan, but we can't wait until next year.
Okay.
Putting duct tape on for the best, they've been evaluated and they will last 3 weeks here.
Okay.
So I just gave you the fuel costs, unleaded fuel costs. Obviously, you kind of see 2020 and 2021 were low. I don't know why. Things have come roaring back. Diesel fuel costs, I can't quite explain the bump in 2022. I can't think of any big events that have been causing the larger trucks to be out and about more. But it was slightly higher. And then maintenance costs, you'll see there's a jump in 2023, 2024 is understated by about $30,000 because work that we had planned to get done because of everything that happened last late fall, early winter, just included us getting a street sweeper in. The whole assembly underneath needs to be replaced for about $30,000. So that will come in 2025. So you'll see that jump, but that was what they were trying to get done last year, but weather got in their way. And then upgrade to hybrid and electric vehicles. So, we talked previously about the Ford F-150 electric vehicle. That's something that we will hold on now because we need to wait until the EV charger study is done and move that project forward. Currently, but haven't already charged that. So I just gave you that value. And then the F-150 hybrid. Based off of just Ford's website, it's a $1,900 additional charge to upgrade to electric. So not to electric, but to hybrid. So it's not much price increase. So it makes sense through fuel savings that you get. That's that $1,900 when you purchase it.
Is that a plug-in hybrid still?
It's not a plug.
It's not, okay, just checking.
Yep. So recommendations, obviously we will transition to hybrid vehicles as we can. Chris, our new superintendent, will work with NUD to evaluate that Ford F-150. Chevy's also got some vehicles on the market that can be evaluated. So we would begin evaluating those, see how they could be supported by NUD. So they do all of our maintenance and repairs.
Are they experienced in hybrid yet? Supporting that?
We have some
System?
hybrid vehicles already that they
That they
maintain
are.
for us.
Okay.
Yeah, fleet vehicles in the PD, fleet vehicles, administration vehicles. We have one in there right now, so.
Okay. And they've been,
Yeah, most
They got it now.
shops will do hybrid. I take mine hybrid to a regular shop. It's when you get to the electric vehicles that shops have. Sometimes they just can't do it. They don't have the training, the expertise, the equipment.
tell me about it.
Yep, charging infrastructure, obviously, we would look at DC fast chargers, and I think that's the direction that I would take that as they do the study for public works in City Hall. And then obviously we want to move as many vehicles as we could to fully electric vehicles. I did some research. International has some nice electric, but they're much larger than what we need for our operations. So things will come down. I also put in the fleet report that I sent to you, solid state batteries and that technology. Things will begin to change as that comes to market, as they have basically more power and you can go heavier vehicles. I guess Sound Transit's buses are going to be all electric. They got that figured out.
So follow-up question for the electric vehicles, have we looked into, if power goes out, we still need those vehicles to be operating, are we looking at backup battery options that could also maybe support City Hall? Have we started toying with what that might look like?
Dickinson. That's part of the study that you look at is that resiliency and what size of generator would City Hall need, not only to actually have City Hall operational with heat and air conditioning, which are beneficial in power outages if you're going to try and house people here as emergency shelter, but to have those chargers available as well. That will have cost impact to that, and as she discussed with you, transformer size, panel, everything like that. So we will explore that as we go through that process.
Be interesting to explore like the solid state battery with like the solar, recharge, kind of like getting into sort of that circular power system that doesn't pull from the grid as much, giving us that availability.
Yeah, last I heard on solid state, they were saying 2027. I bet that's gonna slip, but
Well, and the other consideration, of course, is that those backup batteries take a huge amount of space. So I'm thinking, is there some way that, given basically the work on the lakefront park, and that's a big, there's some space there that might be available. I don't know basically if there's any feasibility in actually putting the battery there as opposed to on site here where there's not really any space.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, for the lakefront park, because it's being developed at the same time as the lift station will have emergency generator power that will be tied into the structures of the lakefront park. So we will have that capability there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that Tesla makes wall hanging battery units, but how many do you need to charge a City Hall for a week?
Yeah. They've done those like full-on banks for like actual utility support. It got big one in some part of Australia or whatever, but who knows what the technology is gonna look like in a few more years when we can actually pursue it more realistically.
What's another go?
Yes, so our city has a lot of hills. Is there a difference in performance between the hybrid versus the fully electric trucks in terms of like ability to navigate steep hills, curvy roads, that sort of thing?
Shouldn't be. I think it's the same chassis and everything. So
I think the only
the electric would just have a lot more torque and power.
Yeah,
they're all torque.
in the snow and the ice, it's actually,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we get four-wheel drive, obviously for public works, we don't look at any two-wheel vehicles, but I don't think it's recognized any. handling
Might
issues.
be an apples and oranges, but I think like Metro has struggled a bit with buses being able to get up, like electric buses on steep hills in inclement weather. Now that might be, that's larger than the trucks we're talking about, so it might not be an issue, just making sure that what we get can fully perform in the city.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the hybrid vehicles, there will be no problem there, but it's a good question to think about is move to electric.
and I think just to remember that they're also heavier vehicles, so we need to be also thinking about our road maintenance. And especially as not just our vehicles, but more vehicles become electric, that wear and tear is gonna increase on our roads. Just the general.
Oh,
Can you go back a moment to the budget? You had a budget,
oh,
because the one that I have, from the 20th doesn't have 510.
no, the one that was emailed out.
Oh,
So does this have an old one? I don't think.
no, this is my old one because I didn't see the
Oh,
budget.
yeah, the old one that Director Vaughn put together did not include the 510. We didn't know that. We didn't know about the sole mower, riding mower at the time she put the spreadsheet together, so it's been updated. I'll send out to you for this meeting. And as you can see, that's mostly $215,000 value, so. The public works, replacement balance you have 2930 is still a sizable amount. And as you remember, we have a $500,000 plus street sweeper in 2032. And then a dump truck in 2035. And that street sweeper, we looked when we purchased this one, the technology wasn't there, but they are making electric street sweepers. So I think at that point, we will evaluate that at that time, because technology had 10 years to come along.
Can you put together, and maybe it's just because I'm not smart enough to figure it out, a spreadsheet that shows what you want to purchase each of the biennium as a spreadsheet, so it lines up with these numbers?
I can't. I did that during the budget process, so that'll be easy to get to. They had it laid out at fleet replacement program, so we can get that for you to just drop that in here.
Yeah, so for 510, I'm gonna purchase these
Actually,
things.
Yeah, it shows. So this 3 patrol and a 3/4 ton truck, and then 4 police admin. So in this biennium, 27-28, it's 3 patrol cars and a 3/4 ton truck. 29-30, it's 4 admin cars. So Lindsay did port this over. And 25-26, these are the items we're talking about. She talked to you about 3 patrol vehicles and transport van. Tonight, we're talking about the F-150, the 550, and the 1/4 ton, and the silt mower and the riding mower.
Right, but you're also proposing to replace vehicles in the next biennium.
Picture these here.
Well, I'm sorry. You've identified, or maybe I'm just too slow to figure it out. Replacement of other public work assets in the coming biennium. Or where it says,
Replacement gear. So
yeah, so yes,
are we on this slide you're looking at?
yes, so when you talk about replacement years, I don't see that they're corresponding to the budget for the other bienniums.
No, oh, okay.
They seem disconnected. So if I'm gonna replace $100,000 for the vehicles in 27-28, then I would have dollars.
Hmm.
Which is actually gonna be considerably more than that.
Yes. Okay, I would like to take a look at that.
Because, I mean, the goal is if you're representing 3 biennia, so connect this to those biennia.
Right, so just to clarify, Councilmember Leo, the thing you were trying to say, for instance, on the fleet details, you were talking about replacing the Jeep Cherokee, the 2006, and the Ford Explorer 2012. And that's not showing up on this other spreadsheet, is what you're saying?
So for example, the Chevy 3/4 ton replacement year of 2028
right.
doesn't show up on the budget spreadsheet. Because the 2 3/4 ton trucks, so still 90.
No, it's 1 3/4 ton truck.
Oh, they're on difference.
The double asterisk is just to,
They're listed place.
No, you got two
2 Chevy.
2 Chevy 3/4 ton, different model replacement of 2028. You got 3 vehicles with a 2028 replacement.
okay,
And it doesn't,
contract,
okay. So if this is your plan, then,
this should match that plan.
Yeah. okay.
We're there.
So that
And
you,
some of these are old replacement days, you can see some of them are past.
yes,
24, but yeah, we would take a look at this.
right. So if the replacement date is passed, then you would just update it and say, well, we're not gonna replace it. But we're gonna replace it some other.
Okay, we'll go back, we'll evaluate this together. See what makes sense.
Are there any other questions for Administrator Hill?
Just this 2016, well, it's a 2028 replacement date, it's got 43,000 on it, so that's what we would want to evaluate.
I forgot to ask you, there's nobody online, right? Okay. Check. Might as well remember that before the end of the meeting.
Oh, and just at the end of your slide, you'll see that we got the base year, the tax, the updated. We carried it across with 10%. Like that was where we would see that inflation. May not be right nowadays.
Related to that, it's a fast moving target, but tariffs on auto parts, is that likely to escalate these costs further?
It could, I mean, they were stayed for 90 days yesterday, so we're back down to 10%, unless they're coming out of China, then talking about 43% now. So it's kind of a wait and see. I think the sooner we can, at least for the vehicles we need now, the sooner we can get out to market and lock them down. If they're in the US or sold before the tariffs go into place, they're honoring the price. So roughly 90 days,
So is that,
90.
is that the sort of desired target for you just to purchase any of the 2025 vehicles, just to be as quick as possible to make sure that we have that?
Yeah, we're coming back to you on April 24th for action for both fleet. Chief's already preparing, they're already searching for vehicles, identifying what they would put in as far as equipment, how much that would cost to fit within the budget that he's brought before you. So yeah, we would be all the same to just go.
Good to know.
Yeah. And those state contracts are already in place. You get on the website, we build what you need. Sometimes it's already there and Bud Clary can get it right to you at that contract price. Other times you have to order it.
And you said the hybrid is kind of the one that is through that system yet?
And it's not in that system, and so we would have to reach out a little bit more. Maybe, we get for less, obviously, on state contracts, so that's a worst case scenario. That's what I would,
Okay. That's just retail price, basically.
pretty much, yeah.
Any other questions? I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the bit put in about solid state batteries in the packet version of the presentation. Really informative.
Right.
All right, then, so I think, yeah, we don't have an option to do, but adjourn, so I entertain you to adjourn. See you upstairs in about 15 minutes. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you all.